And so let's get into, you mentioned EWP. What is EWP?
Expanded worldwide planning.
Okay.
And it is a kind of in the early 2000s, the first part of this decade, the planning for high net worth individuals came to be what our firm calls spider web structures. So a spider web isn't a very cheery image. So I would meet with clients and they would show me a diagram, like maybe a whiteboard, say, that took up maybe the whole space of what's behind you, and there were all these boxes and arrows, and it was too complicated. So people would come to us and say, I don't know, maybe they don't even like insurance, say, but we want something simpler. So in a EWP structure, you use a private placement life insurance policy. So you have basically the same structure that you do in any garden variety life insurance policy. You have a policy holder, and that can be the insured life or lives, but you can also insure children if you want the structure to last longer. And then you have beneficiaries, and then you have assets. So you have those elements in every cash value life insurance policy. So what's different about PPLI is you can, if it's properly structured, you can put virtually any asset in there. Physical assets, oil, timber, hedge funds, alternative investments, Bitcoin, yachts. These policies were designed in mainly Bermuda and Barbados, and they wrote the laws to accommodate these asset classes. And almost any citizen in the world can buy what's called foreign insurance in their country. So if you're European, Israeli, Russian, Chinese, their laws say you can buy a foreign policy. So basically these people are buying policies, and that includes US citizens. So you can buy a policy where the insurance company is domiciled in Barbados or Bermuda and access all these benefits.
And so what are the 6 principles of the expanded worldwide planning?
Privacy, asset protection, tax shield, succession planning, like estate planning, compliance simplifier, and trust substitute. The last 2 are mainly apply more to international clients, but the first 4 very much apply to all clients, including US clients.
So these are all typical things that when the client comes to you on the initial, introduction, you guys kind of go through all these different areas in which to best satisfy the customer's needs. Is that what you're trying to accomplish there?
Yes, I mean, basically you, like any form of financial planning, you go over a review of their assets.
Yep.
and what they want to accomplish. So usually when people want to pay less taxes, they want to have an estate plan that's orderly and that and makes sense. And in a lot of countries, there's something called forced heirship rules. European countries, we even have them in the U.S. in Louisiana. They've been modified recently, but they were designed to protect spouses and children, so they got a portion of the estate. But in some countries where they're the strictest, like France, where they use a newer version of the Napoleonic Code, you're locked into a whole regime. You have to give so much to the spouse, so much to the children. So a modern family, divorce rate is over 50% in the world. So the modern family isn't composed of one family anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So these forced heirship rules wreak havoc on someone who wants to leave. So they might want to leave something to their ex-spouse and something to their current spouse, and some children in different countries. And so these policies are enacted in countries where you can do that in a properly structured PPLI policy.
Got it. And you mentioned something to the effect that being able to contribute assets to the policy in a variety of them. Is that determined by, is the investment advisor that is then going to manage those assets and what they're willing to accept under management?
Usually when I go into a case, I try to keep as many relationships in place that are in place. So if people are happy, they want to put, say, some hedge funds, and they have a fund, we let that person manage the funds. In the policy, there are various rules you have to comply with, like with diversification and investor control. But generally, we're able to accommodate most clients' existing advisors in the structure. They may have several investment advisors, throughout the world. And so they're appointed by the insurance company to manage, so the client doesn't have direct investment control in the policy. That's one of the rules. But it's in a properly structured policy, it's easy to accommodate existing relationships.
Okay. And so once a client makes that contribution, is there anything to do with the basis of the asset when it is put into the policy?
Well, probably the most difficult part of the whole enterprise is what you touched on, is avoiding gift tax with the assets going into the policy. So we have various interfamily loans, sales for a note, techniques like that avoid gift tax. Not to say that we can avoid it completely in all situations, but when clients see the benefit of the structure over time, those taxes are easily absorbed. So here is a basic private placement life insurance presentation that I've used in the past. So this will allow us to kind of go through and see how a PPLI policy works inside an EWP structure. So the first thing that's interesting is the PPLI provides many of the same benefits that a regular cash value life insurance policy provides. So what are those benefits? I'm going to list them here. So you get tax-free or tax-deferred growth of the internal cash value, no capital gains taxes, no income taxes, the ability to access that cash value through tax-free loans, and tax-free death benefit in most jurisdictions. So you get this in any cash value life insurance policy. So why would you want PPLI? So what's different about PPLI? Well, PPLI, it focuses, it's basically the assets. In a whole life, universal life, you get a fixed interest rate or generally a selection of mutual funds. But in PPLI, you can put in real estate, physical assets, hedge funds, alternative assets like oil and gas, timber, mining, private equity, intellectual property, art, yachts, and private jets. So here's a basic PPLI structure, but like we've said here in several forms in the past, it's basically the same structure as any life insurance policy. You have the policy holder, which may or may not be the same as the insured life or lives. You have beneficiaries, and you have assets. So in a PPLI, what's different are the assets. And at the bottom here, we have a custodian. It's usually a bank or a trust company of the client's choosing that holds the assets. So again, the assets are flashing because that's the difference. So to say it another way, PPLI focuses on the investment component, not the death benefit. On our structures, for most clients, we keep the death benefit very low. So with a $10 million policy, that's $10 million of assets. We're able to have them purchase only $100,000 of death benefit. And this is institutionalized pricing on our policies. They pay basically the reinsurance rate and nothing else. So it's a wholesale rate. So on a policy like this, it would be in comparison to the $10 million, small change for a client like this. So how did this thing come about, the PPLI? Well, it began way back in the 1970s in the United States. And it was originally a way for executives of Fortune 500 companies to have their own type of retirement plan, different from the firm's 401k or IRA that they offered regular employees. And by the early 90s, it was adopted like in its present form by wealthy individuals, and by the mid 90s, major companies moved into the marketplace. So let's talk for a minute about what is tax deferral. So we're going to look at a chart here, but a little background on the chart. We're going to assume a gross rate of return of 6.5% a year, and a combined state and federal income tax of 49%. So these would be people living in Florida or not in Florida, in California or New York. They might be wanting to move to Florida, but if they're stuck in California and New York, this is a good solution for them. So as we'll see from when we see the chart in the next slide, the PPLI reaches much higher investment levels over time because the income and capital gains generated are not taxed. So here's our chart. So we have 3 columns, 3 different time periods, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. So after 10 years, there's $3.4 million more on the PPLI side versus the taxable investment. After 20 years, it's 8.7 million. And I apologize for the chart here. It's that 48.2 should be over the 40-year column. So you have almost $50 million more in a PPLI structure over 40 years. A very powerful result.
That's a big difference. That's definitely a big difference, huh?
A very big difference. Most people's time horizon, is more like 10, 20 years. But even then, you're much better off. So asset protection. So a lot of times people already have a asset protection trust, or they have various things in place. What PPLI provides is another layer of asset protection that's not available with a trust alone. And how does it achieve that? The insurance company becomes the beneficial owner of the assets going into the policy. The insurance company is listed as the beneficial owner on bank accounts, and all transactions are done in the name of the insurance company. Also, policy assets are held in what's called segregated accounts or separate accounts, so they're not subject to the general account of the insurance company. So in the unfortunate situation of the insurance company going bankrupt, the policy owner would still retain ownership of their own assets. Trust planning. So people say, well, I have a trust, and I think my trust does most of the things you're talking about. Well, it does some things, but it certainly doesn't do everything. A trust provides estate tax exclusion. It can provide generational planning. It can provide some asset preservation and creditor protection. But it does nothing for income tax and capital gains tax. So that's why you have a trust in combination with a PPLI policy. So here we have you can put them all up, all the bullet points while I'm talking. This is a side-by-side comparison of the main points of a PPLI structure versus a trust. So first, let's go over a trust to provide some asset protection, but it's also seen as a tool for the rich. It's more stringent reporting requirements. There's also tax filings for the trust, and more recently, for the beneficiaries, tax filings in some jurisdictions. In comparison, an insurance is contractually based and used by millions. It has tax deferral. The insurance company becomes the beneficial owner. There's simplified or limited reporting, tax-free asset transfer at death, and no capital gains tax, and asset protection. So I hope, I don't know how you're feeling up to this point, but I hope it's not like this, but maybe it's a little like this. So we're going to go over 5 case studies, and hopefully you won't be scratching your head at the end of the case studies. So we entitled it 5 different case studies, one simple solution. So on the surface, most these case studies are going to seem like very different planning situations, but as you'll see, they have basically all the same simple solution. So we start out with a Moscow parent. She had 3 operating businesses in the Caymans, 19 million in cash. We formed a holding company to operate her businesses. She once wished her son, who resided in Florida, to have the operating businesses at her death. And she also wished the son, while she was living, to use the profits from the operating businesses to invest in real estate. So we had to form a holding company for the 3 operating businesses. So we're back to our same chart. So we have the Moscow mother as the policy holder. She's also the insured life. The son is the beneficiary. The assets are her cash and 3 operating businesses in the Caymans. So again, the difference is the assets, are the assets. So next we move to the Wu family. They reside in New Jersey, husband and wife with 2 children. Mr. Wu is a citizen of PRC. Mrs. Wu has a green card. They have multiple real estate holdings throughout the US. They also have portfolio investments in the US and PRC. Net worth 75 million. They came to us after being perplexed at a spider web structure that another firm had shown them. So again, same situation. What's different are the assets. Here we have another, we call him an ultra high net worth entrepreneur. He had companies in the UK, Europe, US, and Africa, very diverse holdings, natural resources, sports franchises, media management. He had residences in 4 different jurisdictions, the UK, US, and Mauritius. Again, he wasn't quite sure about his reporting obligations or whether he had done things right in the past, and he wanted something more simple than what he had been led to believe that he needed. And upon his death, he wished his holdings to pass to a Delaware trust, which we created for the benefit of his wife and children. So again, policy holder, the ultra high net worth entrepreneur. He was also the insured life. Beneficiaries, the Delaware Trust, and the assets are which we just detailed. So again, same structure, different assets. The San Jose family, third generation California residents. They own and manage apartment houses valued at over 100 million. They wish to simplify their present structure. Their aim was to pass the apartment houses to the next generation without estate tax. Again, same structure. Our last example is slightly more complicated, a real estate developer. The firm specializes in US real estate investments. They have approximately 4 billion currently invested in US real estate projects, and their goal is to optimize privacy, tax efficiency, and asset protection for their US and worldwide clients. Again, the policyholder is the company. The insured lives are key executives of that company. The beneficiary is a trust, and the assets are the real estate holdings. So all these are possible with PPLI structures. Our last slide shows the man who's reported to be the tallest man in the world next to the woman who's reported to be the smallest lady in the world. So we just show this slide at the end to show our diversified client base. And that's our slide presentation. Did you have any questions?
Well, I mean, definitely have several questions.
Sure.
So in the sample example of real estate holdings,
Okay.
what, let's just say someone has a apartment, multifamily apartment portfolio that is currently managed by several different property managers. Can you kind of walk through what that process would look like when they, do the, I guess, initial contribution into the policy? And then how does that management structure look like, and kind of what allows that management to stay in place?
Like I said before, the insurance, the policy functions more like a kind of trust. When you go to the regulations for variable policies, and the PPLI is considered a variable policy in jurisdictions like Bermuda and Barbados, you see that unlike just on a retail policy, a menu of mutual funds, you can put any asset class in there. But also the insurance company becomes the beneficial owner of the asset, but it's an insurance company. So frequently we have to add another layer in the policy, a holding company, like we did for the Moscow parent. So very frequently that's one of our first steps, while the insurance company goes and finds an independent valuation, because this all works because of something called in-kind premium, which regular retail insurance policies don't allow. So these multi-family apartment houses become premium because these policies can support in-kind premium. So instead of writing a check, you contribute the value, and generally we don't need a full-blown independent appraisal. We just need some independent valuation by a third party. The apartment houses are worth, say, $500 million or whatever.
Okay, and then those apartment complexes will be set up in that holding company that's in between the life insurance company, correct?
Right, and it's basically, one way to think about it is it's retitling the asset in the name of the insurance company. So the business enterprise of the apartment complex is going to maintain its same character. They have to pay state and local income taxes, and they can't be away from that. But the reason someone would put that into the policy is upon transfer, it's transferred as a tax-free death benefit. But the daily operating parts of the businesses don't really change, but the titling of the asset changes. So the insurance company becomes the beneficial owner until the death of the insured, and then it's transferred to the beneficiaries, which are usually set up where the beneficiary is a trust, and the various beneficiaries are named inside the trust.
Okay, and for those that are not so familiar with this, what is the reason behind keeping the death benefit lower and I guess the cash value higher, correct?
Well, most people come into when we initially sit down, they want to use PPLI as an asset structuring tool with as little cost as possible. So the cost of insurance using the US regulations becomes a very significant part of any policy, because there has to be what the IRS calls a corridor between the cash value and the death benefit. So PPLI policies, that can be very small.
Does that deal with the MEC, I guess, right? Correct? Does that deal with MEC?
It's kind of that's going in the right direction, but it's beyond that. It's in these jurisdictions, there's a type of policy called a frozen cash value policy. So basically, that policy allows you to buy a risk, what the IRS calls a risk shifting element. So there has to be some death benefit, but it can be as low as 1%, where in a traditional policy, say if the death you wouldn't even use a traditional policy, but say if it was 100 million of insurance, you could only put 30 million of assets in that. So you'd have to buy 100 million of insurance to support 30 million of assets. So, and if the client was coming to us for just restructuring, and they already have some life insurance in place, they don't want $100 million worth of life insurance.
So who else is, PPLI a great fit for? I mean, if people are listening here, I mean, the problem is, I guess, everyone's always wondering if it's a great fit for them, besides the 5 million net worth, is there any other factors taken into consideration to determine ahead of time, whether, they're going to make a phone call to you or set up an appointment of, what would determine them being a fit for a policy?
Well, I would say that they would need to have like, minimum 10 to 20 million of assets. And they want, for instance, like let's go back to one of the examples. So the San Jose family. So a typical, like estate planning attorney might recommend to this family that they buy, I'll just guess what their estate tax bill might be, $10 million worth of life insurance to pay for the estate tax. Well, that's one way of doing it, but you have to buy $10 million worth of insurance. In a PPLI contract, if we do a side-by-side comparison, like our consulting fee, the insurance company's fees are nowhere near that figure of the $10 million worth of insurance. So it's a much simpler and more cost-effective way to pass assets down to the next generation. International families, that's why we had several examples where, like I said, very frequently PRC families have two lives. They have a New York, California life, and then they have relatives and assets back in the PRC. So frequently we're able to put all or most of their assets within this policy. So they have one simple solution, to go back to our title for the case studies. So there's simplicity, there's of design, and for US clients, it's frequently tax savings. That's the hot button. And with real estate, like I said, real estate is just a perfect asset, or hedge funds, where people are paying short-term capital gains, ordinary income taxes. They might be getting a great return, but they're not keeping so much of it.
So these investment advisors that manage the accounts on behalf of the clients, is there any like restrictions to what they can do, or is it kind of, on the they're supposed to kind of take the advice of the guidance of the client, or how does that relationship work, and kind of where could that go astray?
Well, there's this famous case in the last few years called the Weber case, where somebody set up structures similar to our examples, but then he basically totally ignored the investor control regulation. Basically, the regulations say that you can give the investment advisor a mandate, but you can't choose, like, say, I want so many shares of Apple, so many shares of Intel. But this person, it even went beyond that. They just they totally dictated to all the advisors, exactly what they wanted, which you can't do. But it's funny when you say that to, like, somebody like at JP Morgan or investment bank. I never let the clients tell me what to do anyway. I mean, it's usually the investment. I mean, people go to investment advisor because they want them to do the day-to-day work, and they give them their risk tolerance, and the investment advisor designs a portfolio around that. So it's really not so different, but you can't be completely hands-on. But for most people, they're busy either going about their other businesses or enjoying their life, and they come to us. If they're completely hands-on, they're probably watching YouTube videos and trying to construct their own PPLI company.
That's usually, hey, everyone starts somewhere, and these days they all start on the internet, right?
That's right. I mean, you go to at home, if I want to do a plumbing repair, you could watch 5 YouTube videos on the same, how to replace, this pipe in your bathroom. So it serves some function.
So do you feel that some clients, it's just may not be a fit for them if they're kind of like, I guess you call it a control freak, where they always have to control the deal? Because in this case, you basically give up control of your assets.
Yeah, if they're completely like the man in the Weber case who want to dictate crossing every T and dotting every I, it won't work.
Okay. I mean, I think that's, most of, the questions I have for the day. Is there any other things, regards to the policy that you want to leave us off with?
No, other than like I said, it's very client friendly in terms of cost. The basic cost for M&E in the ballpark for the insurance company is 1%. So it's basically an asset management fee. And as you saw from the tax deferral chart, over time, it's completely absorbed, that 1%. So I virtually never had anybody walk away because they thought the fees were too high.
All right. That's good. And so we always ask a final question. And what is one of the biggest things you've implemented in your life that has helped increase your net worth?
Well, it's making the decision to concentrate on PPLI. Actually, I had a case with another person I partnered with in New York, and he basically didn't want to do it. He said, "Well, there's people that specialize in that," and I thought to myself, "Well, why can't I be one of those people?" Because it was a pretty decent case, and I hadn't done one before, so I had to get up to speed fairly quickly to get it done. But I enjoy it. It has in pre-COVID times, it provided lots of interesting travel, and I meet many interesting people, and provides a good income.
So do you think it's also, I guess it's a correlation of the type of clientele or the people in the PPLA industry that has fostered greater relationships to also increase net worth and give opportunity into other investments?
Yes, all of those things. And then just one note here, we mentioned COVID times. The companies I work with are now able to, most policies, waive the physical exam, because you can either, if they have existing life insurance on the reinsurance side, they can reassign it to this policy, or basically pay for the death benefit, giving up part of the cash value. So as you saw on the example of the 10 million life insurance, would be a few $1,000s a year. So for a client like this, they can bypass the physical exam, which most people aren't overjoyed to be doing in this difficult time.
Well, that's good. I think hopefully the life insurance companies will streamline certain policies, especially for younger folks, because they sometimes make you go through all kinds of hoops, doing all the blood work and all that stuff for
Right.
months.
Right, right. And they have, things have been in place for actually years, but the insurance companies are fairly conservative and they move very slowly, which is also a good thing because they hold so much of combined assets of people throughout the world. But yeah, there are ways of looking at pharmaceutical records, doing less invasive tests. And so I think it's speeding that up. You're right.
So if any of the listeners want to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do that?
Call the US office number, 530-692-1007.
All right, and we'll link the site in below. We'll link the website, and we'll also put that phone number. And I just want to thank you, Michael, for coming out today, and it was great having you on the show.
Yeah, likewise. And good luck to you and many more good podcasts. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching my latest interview. If you like what you saw, please click the subscribe button below to become a member of the Joe Robert community. Be sure to hit the bell to turn on all notifications so you always know when I post a new video. Tell me what you thought about the content in the comments below. I always read them and would love to answer any of your questions.